where do you go from here? You gonna,
Yeah, so what we'll do today is just have the group give us a little overview on where we were when we started this process, the timeline it took to get here, and just kind of an overview of the process that it takes to get a one watershed, one plan for the Thief River watershed. We're doing right over here.
Perfect. So I got a pretty short and simple presentation, and Myron highlighted it well. Only about 10 slides, so it won't take too long to get through, and really just the point is give people a sense of what is a one watershed, one plan, and what did we do to get where we are today, and what do we have left to get done. So just a little bit of background on what one watershed, one plan is, and anyone in the room that wants to correct me if I get any of the details wrong is more than welcome to. But the general idea originated out of a local government roundtable. The idea being that local governments were interested to start planning on a watershed scale rather than a county-by-county scale. And through that local government roundtable, eventually Minnesota Bowser adopted one watershed, one plan, which gives the local governments here the ability to start planning again at a watershed scale instead of just based upon local government boundaries. Kind of setting context for the Thief River watershed versus the rest of the state. So this is showing all the watershed boundaries where a one watershed, one plan can be completed. You're seeing the Thief River highlighted in the red circle up in the upper left-hand corner. Anything that's got color to it in this map either has a completed plan or is in the process of completing a plan. So really just the purpose of showing you this is to kind of show where the Thief River sits relative to the rest of the state and to make the point that there's really a lot of areas around the state that are going through this same planning process. So general timeline for how we got to where we are today. This plan really started up, I think it was about August 2017 is when the group got organized and got started. January of 2018, so just a few months later, the public kickoff meeting was held, and that's where we did two meetings, one here in Thief River Falls and one out in Grigla, to just give an informational overview of what this plan process was and the opportunities that the public was going to have to give input on it, one of which is now. After that, we spent about a year and a half developing this plan, and when I say the word we, I'll explain who we is in just a minute. So there's a pretty good deal of effort put into this planning process. The groups I'm going to show you on just a couple of slides here met roughly monthly for over a year, so it's about 18 months, to develop all the content that was put into this plan. So pretty good investment of time and energy getting us to where we are today. So today is a public hearing for the draft plan. The plan's gone through a 60-day public notice. We've received written comments, and we're here today to gather any remaining verbal comments that we get during this public hearing. The idea being then that we'll move forward and revise the plan based upon the feedback we've gotten through this public hearing and 60-day notification process. So final steps that we have remaining, again I mentioned, revise the plan based upon the feedback we got during the 60-day notification and the public hearing. The plan then does have to go through a local approval process as well. So once it gets done getting approved, so to speak, out of this group or finalized, each local government then gets to bring the full plan back to its own local boards to decide if the local boards are going to approve the plan for local adoption. After that, kind of the final step in the process after local approval is going through the Bowser review process. Roughly the timeline we're shooting for right now is to have this all wrapped up in March. So we're hoping to have a Bowser-approved plan, which includes all the local governments approving it first, by March of this year. I should have mentioned right at the start, if anyone's got questions or comments while I'm ripping through slides, go for it. So I mentioned the word we getting this plan done. So this is the structure of the groups that really were the most active in developing this plan. And I'll just kind of quickly take the group through this, although I think most people in the room know what these committees are. The policy committee is really the owners of this plan, and that's the different local government representatives that make up the board, so to speak, for this plan process. They, at the end of the day, get to have final approval from this group as to whether or not the plan makes it to a final stage and goes to local government approval and eventually the Bowser review process. We also formed an advisory committee, which was made up of citizens within the watershed, different technical staff who can lend their expertise to the planning process, And that advisory committee was really meant to give input both to the planning work group and to the policy committee as the plan was developed. Finally, the planning work group was the local staff who, once this plan is approved, are going to be have the lion's share of responsibility for doing the work to implement it. And so I got about 4 slides left, and all I'm going to do is kind of give a high-level walkthrough, what you kind of see in the executive summary of the plan. If I went into any detail on what's in the plan, I think we'd still be here at Vikings Kickoff later tonight. So what I'm going to do is just give a high-level summary of what's in there, and then if people have any specific comments, questions, or concerns, they're welcome to ask them. So this is just a little map of the Thief River watershed. This was the planning region. You see within it some of the major waterways along with the planning boundaries that were established during this plan process. In working through the planning process, the groups came up with 27 priority issues. Top tier priority issues, they'll say, which is tier A and tier B. So that's quite a bit of work for the next 10 years, if you think about that, 27 different issues to work on. All I've done is called out a few examples of those 27. They're paraphrased and they are not comprehensive, just examples of some of the things that made it into the A and B categories. Things like elevated sediment and drinking water were in the A category, along with making sure drainage systems are properly functioning. Some examples of some of the tier B issues that came up were increased public awareness and increased stakeholder input. Now for each of these 27 issues, the group came up with short-term and long-term measurable goals. The idea being that those issues are the things the group is going to make a priority to work on, and these are the goals they're going to work towards. An example of one of the goals would be stabilizing 20% of the unstable sections of different drainage ditches. And that's listed out in a little more detail here. Finally, the group also came up with a budget for trying to implement this plan. And you're seeing the 2 tiers of budget that if you review the plan or go through the executive summary that you'll find there. The baseline is really the local resources that are going to be available to work on this plan and operate some of the core functions within this area. Level 1 would then be an estimate of the outside resources needed to achieve really some of those short-term goals. And with that, take any comments or questions. So we can leave the floor open for just a couple of minutes, but do we have one? I'm sorry.
Sure. Just a question, if you go back 1 slide, you have the budget on there?
Yeah.
Do we have an estimated amount that the One Watershed, One Plan would be receiving each year by being part of that?
So I believe there is 2 years of funding approved by Bowser right now, which is through a non-competitive watershed-based program. I'm not exactly sure what the specific dollar is for this watershed off the top of my head. Matt, maybe you know?
I think it's roughly 540,000 for the 2 years.
Per year, yeah. Now, it is possible that that will continue for the 10 years of the plan, but the only thing that's been budgeted at a state level is the next 2 years right now, I believe. And in order to receive those, you need an approved plan.
So for clarification, it's 540 each year?
No, for 2 years.
Combined, okay, all right. So about 250, 270 on each year, okay.
You can spend the whole 540,000 in 1 year, but they give you 2 years to develop projects and to get them into queue for construction.
And even with those resources available, the group is not excluded from applying for additional outside resources also.
Any other questions?
I guess I'd just like to make a statement that it was a long process, and it took a lot of people over that 18-month period, and it was a lot of individual efforts to take time of their day, because there's a lot of folks that were here don't get paid to be here. Just want to thank everyone that did participate on a regular basis, because it really helped develop the plan the way really the landowners and the people of that watershed wanted the direction they wanted to move with the plan.
Anyone else? questions? Otherwise, you want public comments or anything like that, or is this the time, right? No?
If anyone from the public has comments on the plan, they're welcome to make those comments now, and we'll make sure they're documented.
Anything at all? We were thinking a half hour, but maybe 15 minutes. Oh,
Mr. Chair, I would just, as we move forward, I guess I would like to have Matt Fisher from Bowser give a indicator of what we have to do to move forward now with the plan to get it finalized, I guess.
all right. Matt, you wanna?
Sure. So yeah, Drew talked about it a little bit, but yeah, no, once the hearing, once you close it, being that we haven't got any comments, at least at this point, I think we would ask the policy committee to move forward with the plan for Houston to make the revisions based on what we talked about with the written comments that we received. I don't know how much time they would need to do that, but that'd be the next step. After that, that's what we said, we'd take it to each individual board for their approval, and that'd be local staff just taking it to their own boards to review and give the thumbs up. Once we get everyone to sign up, then it gets submitted to Bowser. We would need it by approximately middle of February, so it'd be your January meetings. It would likely go to your individual boards. March 5th, I gotta double check that, but I believe that's the date we have scheduled for the Bowser North Region Committee to meet. You're all welcome. The whole policy committee's welcome. We'd like at least a couple of you there. We don't need everyone, but if you want to come and see how that is, we don't have a location yet, but we'll let you know that information once it's set. But that's where they would review the plan and make a recommendation to the full board, which would go to be the fourth Wednesday in March. I don't have the exact date on me right now, but and that's the process. In between now and then, hopefully we'll have the planning work group still working on the work plan for that $540,000, the first round of money you're going to get, and so that hopefully shortly after the plan's approved, we can get the work plan done and get you the grant so we can start implementing.
Okay. Turn it over to the chairman here. Drew, anything else?
That's all we have. If there's no comments, it's up to you, Mr. Chair, if you're ready to close the meeting.
Any more public comment?
You wanted, were you asking the policy committee to approve this, or to approve moving on today then?
Procedurally, I think we gotta close the hearing,
Yeah,
if I'm
right.
right, and then after that, if you'd be so willing to approve final revisions, that'd be great.
Okay, is there any more public comment? Is there any more public comment? Hearing none, do we have a motion to close the hearing?
You can just declare.
We'll close the hearing.